Hey there. Welcome to episode 9 of the Boob Report podcast, powered by Helix Interactive. Today, I'm hanging out with Darla Ray. She is an award-winning filmmaker and CEO of Filmit Productions. She is known for making films that motivate, uplift, inspire, educate, and more importantly, entertain audiences while raising awareness and championing her causes. Her films have covered SCI, rare brain malformations, deafness, and now breast cancer. Courageous Warriors, Beauty from the Ashes, is Darla's latest endeavor and passion project. Her feature-length documentary is filmed from a unique and rare point of view that showcases survivors, caregivers, and newly diagnosed patients and offers hope, education, and alternative approaches for healing. Let's get started. All right, so we are so very excited, and I got to say, incredibly honored to have Darla on the show with us. She is a documentary filmmaker, and I was introduced to her through a mutual friend, and I'm just so incredibly excited to have you on here with us, Darla. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome what you're doing, and it's an opportunity for everybody to talk about the issues, that everybody faces. So thanks for having us.
I
Me.
appreciate it. Hey, well, why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself? Just,
Sure.
little introduction to Darla and who you are.
Well, I'm a filmmaker. I've been making films for, I don't know, 30 years, maybe something like that. But I started actually acting when I was a kid in LA, and I did a lot of stage and everything. So I actually got into the business of filmmaking once I crossed over from stage and started working as an extra on films in California. But we were never told that you could do something besides act. As a girl my age, being a teenager growing up in California, back then they just thought, oh, you have to be an actor or you have to be a model. So one day I thought, well, why am I not making films that I want to see or with causes that I want to address? So, I mean, I literally didn't know a thing about writing a script, wrote a script, made the first film. It won a lot of awards. It was a family film, a narrative feature. This is my first actually documentary feature. I've made documentary shorts, but I've never made a feature-length documentary. And so, I just kind of jump in.
Oh, I love it. Both feet, jump in. That's awesome.
Yes. And, this film took me 3 years to make. I've never taken that long to make a film before, but there was just so much information, and I really had to figure out which way I wanted to go with the story. So for me, it's Courageous Warriors, Beauty from the Ashes. And it's really about survivors and caregivers. Although breast cancer is the backdrop, it's not a cancer film. It's about these women that kick ass and take names is what it's about, So that's really how we got to this point.
I love it. I love it. Well, we were introduced through Suzanne Hagemeyer with Hope Held by a Horse, which is featured in the documentary. And I just love that. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to see this. Tell us, why did you make this film? What brought you to this project?
Well, interesting enough, I was making a short narrative film about a 20-year-old who gets breast cancer. And in the course of the locations, we ended up shooting that at Triva's in Denver. And Triva's they're no longer open, unfortunately. But excuse me, they fitted people for mastectomy bras. And those women started telling me all these incredible stories. And I would go over there and have lunch with them and say, well, tell me some more stories, maybe I should do this a documentary on the ladies that fit women, and they go, no, you've got to meet these incredible women. And the first person they told me about was Suzanne. And they said, oh, I worked with her and she did, I think it was a day of caring modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we finally spoke on the phone, kind of played phone tag for a while, uh, she said, well, you need to meet this person. And then that person I called, I said, well, you need to meet this person. Then they would lead back to Suzanne. And I mean, it just, I did over 100 interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to really look at what is my story, who says it best, and what do we have to offer in this film. That's the one piece of it. The other piece of it is my mother lost her battle at the age of 60 with breast cancer. My best friend about 5 years ago, she lost her battle with breast cancer. Now, I was a caregiver for my mother the first time. And then I was a caregiver at the very end with my girlfriend for just a short window. And I didn't realize it until I started making this documentary. First of all, it was kind of significant. I started at the age of 60, which that's how old my mother was when she passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought there was a significance to that. I thought, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it. And then I thought, I never thought I was going to turn the camera on myself until my piece as a caregiver. But I realized in the course of making the film, I've been carrying this anguish and pain and hurt, and I didn't quite know what to do with it. And I thought, well, if I don't know what to do with it, I'm sure there's a whole lot of people out there that don't know what to do with it, whether they're diagnosed and they're the survivor or they're the caregiver. And so that's really how I got to here.
Yeah. I think that's one side that a lot of times we neglect to look at is the caregiver side, the person who, is there. I know just for me personally and how I was raised, when my husband was taking care of me, and he did an amazing job. He's absolutely, I refer to him this way all the time. He's absolutely my Prince Charming. I worried how that affected him mentally and the toll that it took on him, as well as our children, our son and daughter. But he was there with me every day. And when I started feeling better after my first surgery, I really had to push him out the door to go do things and do fun things and take care of himself. So
and that's a pretty common situation because, you have this idea like, well, something bad is going to happen if I step away for a moment. And, nobody actually asks the caregiver how they're doing.
Right.
9 times out of 10, they'll come in, they'll bring meals, all this stuff. And it's like the caregiver's in the corner curled up in a ball because they're doing that job plus trying to keep everything else, the plate spinning, especially with kids.
Yes.
I mean, I know I've interviewed people that they thought, well, I'll just keep it going like everything's normal. I'll pretend everything's normal. And then they crash and burn as well. And, and it's not a negative thing. It's just trying to educate people that when the bomb goes off with a diagnosis, there's this huge ripple effect. And even the kids may not even know. I mean, if the person that's diagnosed is just crammed through this tube with all these questions and like, okay, you're going to have this treatment, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and their head is spinning, certainly their kids' heads are spinning, and their spouse, ultimately their caregiver, they're just as lost.
Right.
There are organizations that have that ability to help.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed with some of the caregivers, and we have one gentleman, not only was he a caregiver, like, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago for his wife, but he got breast cancer.
Oh,
and so then he walked through it, and he describes in our film the difference between the two. And then his wife's breast cancer came back, like maybe 4 years ago. And he said, he talks about the differences from when she first had it to how he was treated to then how hers was handled this time, and just the differences. And the information was so valuable. There were a lot of people that have been involved with the film that were saying things like, well, I've had it 3 times and I didn't know that piece.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure we try to bring information to the table that can be helpful for people. Like if they see the film and then a friend gets diagnosed, they'll know to talk about, like, hope held by a horse,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
hope held by a horse is, I don't know exactly what personally felt like an emotional release.
Mm-hmm.
And because I could hear the questions the therapists were asking of the individuals, and then I was like, oh, that could apply to me with my mom, and oh, well, that makes sense. But when I left there that day, I thought, if everyone that comes here just gets that little release, emotional release and healing, then my gosh, everybody needs to have this program available to them.
Yes. Yeah. I
And
think I think that's hugely important to focus on the caregivers as well. It's the majority of the attention is focused on the person who's received the diagnosis, which,
right,
fair enough.
right, right,
That's a devastating diagnosis that you get, but you also have to take a step back and look at those caregivers because, significant others, if it's a single mom and her kids are there for her,
right.
spouse, parent, whatever, it is a difficult road for them to be on as well. So with making this film, what do you feel the purpose is for the message for this film that you're trying to get out?
Well, I mean, I had to kind of write down what this is what we've ended up saying. Um, we're the movie that tells what everyone wanted to know, but no one had been able to say.
I like that.
Because I think people are fearful. There's so much fear that makes people kind of, they just ball up in the corner, and knowledge is half the battle, and the wisdom and alternative, like the programs that are available, that really champion the individual, the survivor. And actually, by doing that, it's a ripple effect again, because then that person that's getting healed, it translates over into their family and their caregiver. Sure. And so, it's not, people are like, oh, it's just breast cancer. Because I always feel like if someone says it to me again, I'm going to go to jail for punching them in the throat. I'm so protective of individuals now. I'm like, you don't know what that's like. You can't look upon it that way. And, it's a bigger picture. But one of my friends came to our private screening because I wanted feedback from people in the industry. And she said, do you know your film is universal, has a universal message? And I said, well, I thought so, but I'd like to hear what you have to say. And her situation, her husband had fallen in their home, accidentally slipped with socks on or whatever, hit his head, got a traumatic brain injury. And she suddenly found herself in a caregiver role. And she said, your film validates people that have not been validated. When you're asking questions of the medical community, and they're just like, oh, well, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. No, they have a legitimate question and they need a legitimate answer. And so we hope that, and it's already happened, people that, as a result of me making this film, people have contacted me and said, this is what's going on with my situation. And because of that, I'm able to tell them, get a nurse navigator, ask for a patient navigator, do this or do that. These are the steps that people have taken. And so it's not just breast cancer. It's all cancers. It's all anomalies that happen to people, whether it's stroke recovery or whatever. It's just advocate for yourself, advocate for your loved one. Don't take no for an answer, and don't be afraid to ask for a second, third opinion.
Absolutely. You and I discussed this before in another conversation, that I was shocked at how many women that I talk to now that physical therapy was never mentioned to them after their
Right.
bilateral mastectomy.
Yep.
That was one of the first things that my surgeon told me. I'm setting you up with a physical therapist. In my mind, I was like, well, it's my boobs. Why do I think of physical therapy,
Right.
like my arms or something,
Mm-hmm.
legs. And she said, no, you're going to need this. Trust me. So I met
Mm-hmm.
with the physical therapist before my surgery to see my range of motion, for her to just
Right.
get used to, my body and what was happening. And then I went and saw her 3 weeks after my surgery. And she was a lifesaver. She was an absolute lifesaver, getting me through some of the pain that I was dealing with. And I'm floored at how many people that was never
And it still
suggested.
isn't. It
Yeah.
still isn't suggested. Not everybody gets a nurse navigator that helps them
Mhm.
walk through the process. And part of that is it's all about the money.
Yes.
And it's all about, can a program that has navigators, how many can they have
Hmm.
at each medical facility? Because not everybody gets that.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I have people that were recently diagnosed and called me, and I said, did you talk to, what do you mean you're having surgery? Do you know what your plan is? Have you spoken to an oncologist? What is the plan? Like, step one, you're going to do what? Step
Mhm.
two. And they said, well, they just called me and said I was to come and I was going to have surgery because I have this lump and they're going to cut it out. And I was like, before anybody's cutting on you, you might want to ask the plan of
Mhm.
attack and what are the things that are available to you to help you heal.
Right.
And when and like you, I said, there's Reiki, physical therapy, there's acupuncture, there's all these other non-traditional treatments. Fortunately, the surgeon that I spoke to, like from Denver Health, she said, I absolutely see a reason why we should join Western medicine
Yes.
and non-traditional medicines, Eastern or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
together because it's helpful. And
Yeah.
if there are alternatives, something that is way out there in left field that is considered alternative, well, we need to look at it and possibly consider it, because after all, at one time or another, what we're doing now was alternative.
Yes, absolutely. I think that integrative approach is very positive way to look at things. And women, again, with the boob report, we want to have all options available. If
Right.
women want to go that traditional chemotherapy radiation route, absolutely, we're going to have resources, things
Yeah.
that you can look up information for you. If you want to go more alternative, absolutely. If you want to integrate the both, that's fantastic. Each woman's journey is her own. There is no judgment. You have to do what's right for you and what you're
Exactly.
comfortable with.
Exactly.
So,
And that's really what we address, because we have one woman in our film. I mean, her cancer came back like four times,
oh my
four
gosh.
times. She first the breast, and then came back in the breast again. Then it came in the lung, and then it came up in her head. And that's when she finally said, I'm going to look at alternatives. And she talked with her doctor and she said, look, what, he said, I don't have a problem you doing anything out there, because right now where it's at, it's, if it gets into this ventricle, you can just kiss yourself goodbye. So
Uh-huh.
you just throw anything and everything you want at it.
Right.
So she took it upon herself, she and her husband, and they made their own pure CBD.
Hmm.
She takes pure CBD. She combines it with a lot of other natural stuff that she goes out on the side of the mountain and plucks it up and creates her essential oils and different things. And that woman has been cancer free for 7 years.
Right.
Now, I'm not advocating saying, oh, you go do that. I'm just
Mhm.
saying, we say in our film, here's what somebody else did.
Yes.
And but she was kind of at like, well, if I don't do something, I'm not going to be here.
Hmm.
And that
Absolutely.
and that kind of, I mean, for me, um cancer itself is a money making machine,
Hmm.
regardless of whether it's breast cancer, colon, doesn't matter. um and I do believe that we have to be assertive in advocating for each other
Hmm.
and making this information known, because you think I learned this a long time ago when I made a film called The Goal, and it was about wheelchair athletes that work quads
Mm-hmm.
and traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries. And I remember them saying, well, everybody knows our story. And I go, no, 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 you think everybody knows. It's this small little nucleus here. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to keep talking and telling everybody. And that's why what you're doing is so valuable, because it gives opportunity for people to hear all these stories and different messages and say, it's kind of like when I teach acting, I tell actors, look, not everything's going to work for you as an actor,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a bag of tricks. And all actors say, oh, I don't have a bag of tricks, but they do. And you pick which ones work for you, for your characteristics and your personality and what makes you tick. If
Right.
you want to go try standing on your head and rubbing mud on your head, that's your prerogative,
Right.
you know. And I think people need to be more accepting of the components that actually help with the mental, emotional part of the
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis and even surviving. And I know you shared before that you've had suffered with survivor
Guilt.
guilt
Yes.
kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
that's I've heard that so many times,
Mm-hmm.
because people are like, well, how come me and not her? Or why is mine only this bad? And that person, and we saw such a stream of extremes from one extreme to another in making this film. We have one woman she's 72 now, 73, I think. And she she said, I don't know why I keep doing this. I've been a pin cushion for all these years. And she has severe lymphedema.
Mm. Oh.
And she said, but then those little grandchildren came over for dinner last night, and I'm reminded of why I do it,
Mm-hmm.
because they love their grandma so much. And I am a human guinea pig. And if it helps other women, then so be it.
Right.
I was like, wow, because everybody contributes something to this journey.
Yeah.
And we found when we interviewed all these people, some people would say the same thing, but some people maybe give more in-depth
Mhm.
information, that they're a little bit more open book with their story.
Sure.
And it creates people have PTSD
Mm-hmm.
as a result of it. It's a traumatic experience. And we are not bred in a way. We don't grow up knowing, okay, if the crap hits the fan, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Now, some people have that personality
Mm-hmm.
and think of the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
Did I lose you somewhere? Something
No,
happened
you're
on
still
here.
here. I've got
Oh,
you.
that's weird. Something popped up on mine and I don't know what it is. I can't even see you. Hang on. Let me see if I can get back over here. That was weird. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
That's live,
Yes, it
live
is.
zooming here.
Gotta love it. You gotta love it.
So I just think it's so valuable for us to share and those journeys.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I sort of my mission statement or mantra, if you will, if I can help one woman, all of this has been worth it. All of it
Yep.
has.
See, I've already helped 5 people
Yeah.
and we haven't even released the film.
There you go.
So I'm like, somebody said, well, you don't have to do anything else now. And I go, no, 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 I want it out there because I want more people to have an understanding.
Yeah.
First of all, it's not every day. I mean, you're doing it right now, but not everybody takes that approach. Now,
Yeah.
some of these people that we feature, they took the approach to do something while they're in the middle of their battle.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, they're just badass.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. And like this one gal, she's she's a, I don't know, VP of marketing or something for aerospace, something special plane or something like that. And she said, I just realized that um, nobody could answer, like, well, who can I talk to? You
Mm-hmm.
know, they asked their oncologists and their primary doctors and such, and even people in the hospital, like, is there somebody that specializes in this from a counseling coping point of view?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, to be honest, most of the money that is raised for cancer goes to research.
Mm-hmm.
So people are living longer as a result, but
Yeah.
nobody is handling the emotional impact and the fallout every year when that anniversary date comes around, and
Right.
they're like, oh my god, am I going to be okay? And they haven't really dealt with any issue. And this particular woman, she created a program called Cope, and it's
Mm-hmm.
being taught at the graduate level at DU.
Oh my gosh.
And our goal is, by putting this in the film, is that other colleges
Mm-hmm.
across the country will want to offer the program, so that they actually have at DU, they have a clinic, and people, you know, and it's for caregivers and family and people going through the diagnosis. They can go on a sliding scale or no money and talk to a grad student who is a grad, you know, I mean, they're already a grad student and they're doing this program.
Mm-hmm.
So they're already technically a counselor.
Okay.
So people can go and have that. They're treating the whole family
Oh, that's
in the
amazing.
counseling. And so I thought, well, isn't that a novel idea?
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
but she, because of her experience, that there was nobody for her to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like she says, you know, she said the PTSD is already difficult in our society, because we have veterans from wars, and you know, mental health is really way out of control and up there.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can do something like this for this piece, maybe it can be an educational piece that leads to helping a different scenario.
Exactly.
And I mean, and when I talked to these people, I was just blown away.
Oh, that sounds like an amazing program. I'm gonna have to definitely do a little research on that. I would love to have her on the show
Oh,
to
she would
talk
do it.
about
She
that.
wrote a book. She wrote a book called uh her name is Diane Smart, and
Okay.
she wrote a book called The Unlikely Gift of Breast Cancer.
Okay.
And she is a dynamite speaker. And that whole program, and you know, like she said to me, she goes, look, I got it started there. She did the seed funding for that program.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, she's working at her old alma mater, I think in Nebraska, to get it on board there, and then just try to grow it out to other colleges, whether they're private or state
Right.
funded.
Oh,
What a great, what a
that's
great thing.
yes, what an amazing gift. That is just, I love
Absolutely.
it. I love it. Well, so what is your ultimate goal for the film? And how can people see it?
Well, right now we're in what they call, you know, kind of the film festival. We call it film festival hell, because we're waiting. Our hands are tied. People are screaming at you. But you can't show it publicly if you're doing that. And the reason we do festivals is it brings some notoriety to the project,
Mhm.
which then brings the right distributors along. Ultimately, is the plan.
Right.
Fortunately, I've been doing this a while. I'm already starting to talk to distributors, but my goal is to get it out there on a platform. And ultimately, because I have so much other footage and so many other things I'd like to say and get into more detail. I
Mhm.
mean, we have a 90-minute documentary,
Right.
and but I have enough footage and programs that I'd like to be able to do, like a series, a docu-series,
Mhm.
where like we do one on just cannabis, and one on just cope, getting into the details of how can we get this to other universities across the country. One is will be more in depth on hope held by a horse,
Mhm.
and how do we grow that, and maybe how do we encourage organizations that are already equine therapists doing equine therapy for other things to consider once a month or every other month, maybe you do a program for breast cancer survivors in your state.
Okay.
So that's really what the plan is. Whether it goes that way or not remains to be seen. But for sure, getting the documentary out there. So people can follow us on Facebook, Courageous Warriors, Beauty from the Ashes. They can go to the website, Courageous Warriors, beautyfromtheashes.com. One of the things we're doing on there is we are creating we have a resource page. As things become available to us and we learn about it, because people are contacting me, hey, I have this program or I have this. I'm like, let's put them up there, because the more the merrier. Because what's good for one person's psychic or physicality isn't good for another. And like one will speak to another person, the other one doesn't. But you want to make these available, because I will tell you honestly, I think if my mom and my friend would have had some of these things available to them, their stories might be different.
Yeah. I can see that. I really can. I think that for me personally, starting the Boob Report, it was just because it started as a private Facebook page to keep people informed, because just making tons of phone calls after a doctor's office was just way too much to do. But and then I turned it into, more informational. But I know for me, just having questions about things or, having to look things up, there is a ton of information out there. It's just so hard to sift through all of it.
Oh my gosh, it is.
It's just, and if there can be, my goal is to have it be a one-stop shop where I'm directing you on to get your question answered.
Right.
We're based here in Colorado. So the Rocky Mountain Cancer Center, I'm directing you to a specific page on their website that you may not have found as quickly.
Right.
If we didn't have it, spelled out in certain ways on
Absolutely. I mean, that's so valuable. That's why when Suzanne told me about it, I was like, I want to do her show, because because I feel like there's this synergy that, some of us are creating some things and it's like, okay, that ball is going to get bigger and bigger. And then that information is going to be disseminated to the masses, hopefully. Yes. And like with our film, we even put it on our website. If you are a breast cancer organization, I don't care where you are. If you want to have a screening of our film as a fundraiser for your organization, please contact us. We will come there. We will come and do a Q&A. We will talk about it, because what a better way to inform other people, but have their, like Kansas, whatever that organization is,
Right.
And so there's just so much that can be done with a simple film that.
Well, I don't think it's simple. I think it's amazing. And I can't wait to see it. I'm just, everything that I've just, being able to communicate with you and talk with you and just, get to know you better. I just think it's going to be amazing. And that I'm keeping my fingers crossed for the docuseries, because that in itself is just going to be something that will help so many women and, so many people in general.
Well, that's a thing too, we have some interesting, like there's a group, I want to say like Connecticut, maybe. She is a survivor and she has these retreats. She takes women out on the water, and sometimes they just go sailing, but it's this community. And there again, they can open up and leave out like, I thought I dealt with that or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that have been thrown at me now since people have heard about the film, and I'm like, oh, they haven't even seen the film. But I wouldn't mind doing that, like, let's make something for that organization. Let's get something out there for this organization. One of the things I will say I was really excited about, because one of the women in our film, she's an ER doc, and she was a flight surgeon for the Air Force. So she's a pretty tough cookie. And she saw the film at our private screening for the cast and crew. And she told me a couple weeks later, we had a concert, the people that wrote the title song Girls Like Me for our film, and Tim did our score. They had a concert for us to raise some funds so that we can submit to festivals and all this kind of stuff. But she sat with me for about 20 minutes outside and she goes, I need to tell you something. I said, okay, what is it? She said, I, I, after your film, she said, first of all, I bawled through the whole thing.
Mm.
She said, and her partner, she said, he just held me and I kept crying. She goes, and I kept thinking, what the hell's wrong with me? She goes, because all of a sudden she goes, I'm 15 years out. And I went, oh, I guess I haven't dealt with all my stuff. And then she had this epiphany. She said, I've seen so much horror in the ER
Mm.
and in the hospital. I want to do something that helps people, whether it's end of life related to breast cancer or just she said, your film is so beautiful. She said, it just made me go, okay, I'm going to go take this course to do palliative care with people.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know what? She said, people are going to see your film and they're going to go, I can do something. And that's what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
I can do something to help. And who knows what it's going to be.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, but for an ER doc to tell me that, she's like, I hadn't dealt with anything. And she says in the film, and I'm sad to say that the medical community did not address anything other than the physicality with me. And then she tells a story about her first night back in the ER.
Mm-hmm.
A woman came in, had surgery, breast cancer surgery, and her drain was plugged, and she was having real bad pain and issues.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, normally, she said, I feel that I've always felt I was compassionate. She said, but there was something I could share with her. I could say, this will get better.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, but what I realized, Darla, she was all alone. Oh. She was all alone and there was nobody there. Mm-hmm. We have to do a better job of having somebody there for people like that.
Yes.
She said, I don't know if it's now I'm hearing caregiver groups are popping up like crazy across the country. Mm-hmm. Partly because of the aging demographic of our population.
Yes.
Yeah. But to hear that from somebody who's been in the medical community for so long, and they also, she goes, I don't know if they just thought I knew all the answers because I'm an ER doc. She goes, but when they called me and they they actually told her husband at the time what the diagnosis was, and they said, you need to write this down. And she said, she goes, I could tell he was totally undone and he needed answers. She goes, and I said, just because I'm a doctor doesn't mean I understand any of that.
Right.
And that's what I keep hearing, even from caregivers and the people getting the diagnosis, because they said, somebody needs to be there to tell us and help us,
Absolutely.
So if we can do that obviously through the documentary is the open door to, let's do the docuseries. I'm game, because there's so much information. And if we can change the trajectory from a negative to a positive overall, that would be ideal.
I love it. Well, I'm just so grateful to you for being on. And now what I would like to do is I'm just going to open an invitation for you here is, once there is an announcement of a date for the premiere, I would love to have you back on, and
awesome.
We can talk about more things and see where you are. I think it would be great to do a follow-up with you. I think
that would be lovely. I'm game.
Yes. I love it.
Thank you so much.
It was so awesome just hanging out with you today. And Darla, I'm so excited for the film. I cannot wait to see it. And we will have all the information, the links, everything you need to know, and how to get in touch with Darla. We'll have all of that in the show notes for you guys to click on. And as always, thank you for tuning in. And Darla, thank you so much for your time. I am forever grateful to you for spending this small amount of time with us.
Thank you so much. What you're doing is amazing. And I think you should have one of those reports in every state. That's what I think.
That's my goal. That's my goal.
Good.
My with this podcast is to have the Boob Report in every state. So yeah, we'll get there. We will get there. All right.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Oh my gosh. Such an amazing time hanging out with Darla. The Courageous Warriors Beauty from the Ashes documentary, narrated by Dee Wallace, is the story of extraordinary women and men who took their recovery from breast cancer a step beyond medical diagnosis by creating new paths of wholeness through body, mind, and spirit, now offering those gifts to others. We have links and information where you can learn more about the film and Darla on our website, www.theboobreport.com/podcast, episode 9, show notes. And a very big thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. Be sure to like and follow us, and definitely share the podcast with your friends. You can become an active listener and support this podcast by clicking on the podcast link on our website at www.theboobreport.com. Take care.